Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer 3 faction speculation video. Recently we talked about the Dogs of War and the possibility of them being included as a DLC race for Total War Warhammer 3 late in its lifespan, with many people believing that this could actually be a possibility. So let's go check out the possible army list going through the 6th edition army book. As all other faction focused videos, we'll be checking out possible units in the core, special and rare section, some possible lords and hero choices, which will include legendary lords and heroes, and lastly we'll actually look at some regiments of renown because this faction is actually rather known for this. But without further ado, let's begin. The first unit in the core section would be the pikemen, a rather long form of ranged unit in terms of close combat. They can keep their enemies afar and they are actually great anti-charge units. They shouldn't be part of your basic core of your army, but they're great flank protection, and if you're facing heavy cavalry units you can protect your whole army by surrounding your army with this. Think about deploying your army in a box formation once facing against Bretonia. They'd have to take the charge and actually go straight into the pikes in one way or another. Next we have the crossbowmen, very basic and we've seen them before in other factions so we won't have to go through them. Ranged units which will be able to fire over your lines, and you can support your forces that are fighting in the front line with them. Next would be the duelists, which have a hand weapon, usually a sword, and a buckler, which is a smaller version of a shield. They're not really defensive, they are more in the case of being able to fight fast. Think of these guys as cheap berserkers, but with a little bit of defense to them. For the last two unit options, we can cover them both at the same time. They are both heavy and light cavalry. The light cavalry could be seen as mounted yeomen with spears and bows, very similar, fast cav being able to fire on the march. Then we've got the heavy cavalry, which is lance, heavy armor and shield, very similar to the Reichsguard themselves. They are human factions at the end of the day, so they're going to be very similar to the Empire and the Bretonians. However, it's in the special and rare sections where things start changing. In the rare and special, we don't really see a lot of humans. So if we look towards special at the beginning, we have ogres. Giant units which have a multitude of weapons, usually either additional hand weapons or great weapons. They are fear-causing, they are massive, commonly around the size of, say for example, trolls, sometimes even bigger. These are tank units. They're not supposed to be the best in terms of intelligence, and probably won't last long in the battlefield unless directly commanded, but these are big units that are able to actually cause some damage. You can use them in the flanks, you can charge them straight head on, make them do what they do best, and that's destroy. Before we carry on, it's important to note that many of the races that aren't human that join the Dogs of War are generally here for cash, and thus there for hire. Yes, it can also be said that most of the humans are there for hire too, however in most cases these are men of the border princes Talia and Estalia, so they're being there because they're actually from there. But moving swiftly on, we do actually have some humans able to be hired that aren't actually from those regions, those of Norse raiders, who normally come with just either basic hand weapons, flails, great weapons, or additional hand weapons. These are men of the north who come seeking better fortunes, probably trying to get away from the cold too. Among of the other races and cultures, we have some dwarfs who usually come with hand weapons, sometimes with great weapons or crossbows, so we can see them more as pretty much quarrelers here. It makes sense for them to be wanting to go there. In the lands of the border princes Talia and Estalia, there are a few dwarven holds throughout the region, and they know that these guys have good money, so at the end of the day, dwarves are quite greedy and want to get their hands on some cash. Next would be the halflings, which would more or less count as scouts. They're not great in close combat, they are kind of fast, so you could probably use them just to circle around the enemy with some basic bows and throw some fire into it. Just don't expect them to be able to hold off Chaos Warriors. And lastly for special, we do have the Paymaster's Bodyguard. Don't worry, we'll be getting to the Paymaster later, but what we can talk about these units is pretty much they're halberd-wielding units, so they're anti-armor, they're anti-infantry, and they're usually stubborn, so we'll be seeing them as an unbreakable unit pretty much in Total War Warhammer. That's usually how it translates, more or less. Lastly, we'll be looking at the rare units, which there's only pretty much two in their army list. One of the cannon, which, once again, very basic. You've seen this in many factions before, and you'll probably see them in many factions after. But the most interesting one is essentially a halfling half-pot, which is essentially a stone thrower, just a pot of food, though, that seems to be able to kill people when throwing food at people. It's kind of confusing, but hey, this is Warhammer, it's not supposed to make that much sense. In regards to lords and heroes, they would have a mercenary general and wizard lords for lord choices. These would be both lords and heroes, and they would pretty much function as they do for the Empire. There's not too much difference there. The only thing that does have a difference here is the hero choice of a paymaster, which is pretty much the guy who actually leads the armies of mercenaries. This is the guy who pretty much pays them. He's surrounded by bodyguards. He might not be the best fighter, but he's the guy with the cash and people have to follow him. In the Dogs of War army book, there is a requirement that there must always be a paymaster in an army, but he's not really the general. However, I don't really see this happening as a requirement because we don't really have the whole battle standard bearer as a requirement for the Bretonnians, so this is something that would probably be omitted. We're going to move on now to the legendary lords and heroes choices. Honestly, there's not really a lot, mainly because most of them are dead at this point in the timeline. However, given the fact that we have seen repons being created for this timeline, it is possible that we'll see some others, such as, for example, Borgio the Besieger, who is known as a great mercenary general and a, well, besieger. Joke aside by the name, he's known for his siege warfare. It's something that would be rather interesting to have, someone that could just jump into a siege battle same as Vlad does and a few others. As far as I'm aware, there's currently no human general that can be able to do this, so it'd be rather interesting seeing humans go straight into it. However, I've come up with an interesting mechanic that might make him more unique. Given the fact that he's known for his siege warfare, it might be interesting to see him instantly get access to maybe a battling ram and a siege tower, or 2 siege towers. It might be cool, it shows variety, and obviously no other lord does this at the moment. A very famous character would also be Marco Colombo, which is a famous Tilian explorer. He's known for traveling across the world, he's known for discovering places and so on. Yes, Christopher Columbus in the Warhammer world. And while he is kind of generic in both terms of history and lore, it's something that we could see to implement maybe having a race or faction of the Dogs of War actually starting off in the New World, very close to Mazda Mundi as what would be expected. Any other place is also perfectly fine too, it's just you expect it there due to the fact that we have a faction called the New World Colonies over there. There are a few choices for lords and heroes and I won't go through all of them. I'm actually going to try and separate this into 2 or 3 parts. But I do want to glance over Lady Belladonna. I'm not going to go over her first name because I'm going to butcher that really badly, but she is a master of poisons pretty much. She is also a sorceress and a mistress of many assassins. She is a character which is not very well seen in this series too much. We don't get a lot of assassin-y types. Yes, we do have characters like the Deathmaster and so on, but that is to be expected from Clan Eshin. Instead, she has the famed Kiss of Death, which has been known to slay many. Honestly, out of all the characters that I've looked over, to be honest, these make the most sense to me. Most others just shouldn't really be alive in the timeline, like for example, Leonardo da Miragliano, he's the creator of the steam tank and so on, but there's a reason lore-wise why we only have a certain amount of steam tanks. I'm actually going to split this video into another part where I'll go over through all the regiments of renown because there's actually quite a lot of them and I'd like to go into detail into them. But so far, what do you guys think? Do you think that we would have this as a possible faction? Or do you think that we wouldn't? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a little bit of a discussion. Maybe you have some other ideas on how units can be implemented and so on. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like or even subscribing to the channel as it really does help us out. In the description link below, we have various social media links such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description link below, we have an affiliate link with Element Games where you can buy loads of wargaming products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing from this link also supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons, your support means the world to us, honestly. It's really cool to see people wanting to donate just to support a small channel, try and raise their profile a little bit, get some better equipment, and just try and improve their quality of content. Honestly, you guys are awesome. But also, my friends, thank you so much for everything you do with liking, sharing, commenting on the videos. Honestly, it really helps us get the word out and it's super cool of you guys. But with that, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.